With Dragon's Dogma 2 right around the corner, I figured I'd continue talking about my most anticipated game coming out this year. But switching gears a little. Last video I talked about a few vocation ideas I had in regards to the color system of the previous game. But today, I'd like to talk about the original game in question. You know, something that isn't copium and thin air. The first Dragon's Dogma and my experience with the game over the years. What I loved, what I didn't, and what I really hope to see in the sequel. My name is Rusty, and let's dive into perhaps my favorite action RPG of all time, Dragon's Dogma: Dark Arisen. Dragon's Dogma released on May 22nd in 2012, mostly overshadowed in the Western gaming market, largely thanks to behemoth releases like Dark Souls and Skyrim, which may have come out a good 6 to 8 months before Dragon's Dogma released, but they both just had a vice grip on gamers at the time. Skyrim being the more mainstream release that everyone at that time was talking about, especially since it catered to a more casual audience, and Dark Souls, which revolutionized the action RPG formula at the time, and catered to a more hardcore audience that was tired of all the hand-holding and linearity of the AAA game sphere at the time. Couple this with lackluster marketing, Dragon's Dogma wasn't off on the best foot, though word of mouth and high critic score eventually landed it a comfy spot as an underrated gem. I would say Dragon's Dogma was competing more with Dark Souls, as it was a very systems-heavy game with a lot of interaction and crypticness that can really throw a less experienced gamer off, kind of like the Souls series. It threw me off when I first played it, around 2013 or 14. To be completely honest with you, when I first played Dragon's Dogma, I was pretty mixed about it. I was only 13 or 14 at the time, and I couldn't wrap my mind around Dark Souls yet either. I really enjoyed the gameplay and the action, but the rest of it just didn't click for me. Dragon's Dogma has very vague explanations of things, from how quests work to what skills and augments do, and when I was younger, I didn't realize this was intentional, or if I did, I didn't really like it. It was very jarring, especially since the big RPGs that I played at that point were Skyrim and Dragon Age, both games that have much more of a defined structure to them. But Dragon's Dogma has really grown on me, aging like a fine wine. Nowadays, I crave the ability to explore a handcrafted world where they don't tell me everything, and I get to figure it out on my own. The two most recent games I can think of that really showed me how much this style of making a world is just my preference are the two most recent Game of the Year winners, Baldur's Gate 3 and Elden Ring. Of course, I would say that Dragon's Dogma started to grow on me before these games released, and I think it really started when Dark Souls 3 came out. That was the first time I played a Souls game and really got it. I enjoyed the first for what it was, despite my issues with its combat pace and overall clunkiness, and I even enjoyed Dark Souls 2. It was the first time I played a Souls game at launch, and that is just the best time to play. I still think Dark Souls 2, despite its numerous problems, has one of the coolest dual-wielding mechanics with the power stance system that I've ever seen in a video game, and I really wish other games would try to flesh that kind of a system out. I recently played through Dragon's Dogma again, just this last year and into the start of 2024, beating it several times and getting most of its achievements unlocked, completing Bitter Black Isle several times and almost reaching max level. At this point, I already knew that I loved the game, but coming back and playing it again made me appreciate all it had to offer, though there are plenty of opportunities for growth and improvement in the sequel. Let's start with what I liked. What do I enjoy most about Dragon's Dogma? Well, that's probably the easiest question to answer. It's the combat. The combat system is fluid, responsive, and action-oriented, while still feeling like a traditional RPG, where you make choices about what you're going to take with you and who you're going to take with you. It's a very compelling loop. Each vocation in this game feels good to use with their own distinct playstyles and strengths and weaknesses, or at least most of them have weaknesses. I also think the pawn system itself is a very unique and interesting mechanic. Being able to create your own pawn and share them with other players, almost like you're trading Pokemon, is really fun, especially when your pawn comes back and learns of new quests and monster types, and the players get to give you feedback on how your pawn did. By the end of the game, you really feel connected with your main pawn, since you get to decide how they act and fight, allowing yourself to have that one perfect teammate who's been with you since day one. The overall lore and vibes of the world are also great, especially the atmosphere. It has a very nostalgic 80s and 90s fantasy vibe with some dark grittiness weaved throughout. A clear inspiration from Berserk and other media of that time, which is really unique. You don't see it executed to the same degree in a lot of games. Overall, there's just a charm to the first game that just really sucks you in. Of course, the game isn't perfect, so let's look at a few things that I think the sequel could improve. Overall, my biggest gripe with Dragon's Dogma is actually one of the things I've come to love about it: the lack of direction, at least when it comes to the main story missions. I've played enough of Dragon's Dogma over the years that I've memorized most of the missions. I know the layout of Grand Sorn and Cassidus better than the layout of my own house. But for a newer player, someone who hasn't beaten the game yet, there is a distinct lack of direction. I do have a couple friends who have played and have gotten stuck because they don't know where to go. Normally I wouldn't care too much about this sort of thing, but Elden Ring really showed me how great a game designed this way can be, while still making it to where a more casual, newer audience can still follow along and progress without getting stuck. This is thanks to excellent contextual design and world design. This is also another thing that I think the original game lacks: great world design. Not to say I think Grancis is poorly made, but quite a few areas feel pretty empty and void, with nothing to do in them. Combine this with the addition of the same exact enemies, both in quantity and type, respawning in the exact same locations, it makes going from area to area and backtracking, which you do a lot of in the first game, tedious and boring. I can't imagine trying to play this game without the Eternal Fairy Stone, because it reduces the tedium of going from place to place immensely. One of the many benefits of the Dark Arisen DLC. Another benefit of Dark Arisen is Bitter Black Isle, which is an exception to world design in this game. It's genuinely the best designed area in the whole game in my opinion. The overall story itself isn't anything great either, at least for most of the game. It starts really strong and ends even stronger, with the DLC again also being great. But all the stuff in the middle is very bland and disjointed. It only begins to have some significance if you have beaten the game multiple times and are paying very close attention to the greater story. And even then, it's still pretty minimal. What direction am I hoping that Dragon's Dogma 2 will take? Very simply put, I merely hope that they let our Lord and Savior of Capcom, God King Itsuno, cook. This is something that can't be overstated, but when a game director, the creative lead of a team of game devs, has a clear vision for the type of game they want to make, you get something unique. Even if that vision turns out to be poor, more often than not, you will at least get a unique experience. As a longtime gamer, this is something that I crave. And we've already seen the bare bones skeleton of the vision behind Dragon's Dogma, and I've come to love it. So truthfully, I just want more of it. I do hope that they've learned a few things from the first game. To be more specific, one thing that it seems they've already addressed is I hope the NPCs in the sequel are more interesting and fleshed out, giving certain characters quest chains like the first game, but this time, making the characters actually feel like people. The upgraded affinity system that they've already talked about in one of the IGN interview videos they did last month seems like they're already going in this direction, which I'm very excited for. I also hope they make traveling more engaging. Not necessarily harder, but making it to where the world has a bit more randomness to it. It gets old after the second time you're going through an area you've already gone through, and you think, well, I gotta kill these harpies again. Oh no. Even if it's just the enemies being placed in slightly different areas, or enemies getting stronger, or whole new enemies appearing after you reach certain milestones. Maybe even increasing the amount of random encounters you might have. Potentially running into roaming ogres or massive packs of wolves. These could really keep the open world fresh for a player going through the same areas multiple times. I also hope they make the story a bit more engaging throughout the whole experience and make it easier to follow. In the first game, you can get lost very easily, not knowing where to go or who to talk to. It seems like the route they're going for the sequel, which is to have the NPCs approach you with their quests, might alleviate this. So I'm excited to see if this works. Finally, I hope the vocations, however many we get, are improved upon and given even more depth and customization than we got in the first game. It already seems like they're taking strides to balance the classes better by having them focus more on one aspect, hence the splitting of the previous Strider class into Thief and Archer. One thing I really hope too is that they don't have it where there's one ability for the vocations that is just the best, and so not taking it is shooting yourself in the foot. That happened a fair bit in the first game, so I'm curious to see if they'll tackle that. All in all, I'm very excited for this game. In Itsuno, we trust. That being said, I don't know how much more I could really cover about the game, so I'll probably take a break from making videos about Dragon's Dogma specifically until some other big news comes out, or when the game comes out and I start playing it. I'm thinking I might do some streams of Helldivers 2 or Pal World, both games I've heard nothing but good things about and have yet to play. I'll have other videos about other games that I keep track of, especially one toward the end of this month. Before I leave, I'd like to give a huge thanks to all the kind words and feedback I've gotten from my past video. It really means a lot. It's really blown me away just how much attention that video got, and it's given me a ton of motivation to make more videos. So sincerely, thank you all so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. If you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe. Comment down below what you're most excited for in the sequel, or what you're most nervous about going into it. Or if you have any suggestions about games I should play in the interim of Dragon's Dogma 2 coming out. My name is Rusty, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.